Well, hello everyone. Thank you for tuning in. This is the second tutorial for Ableton. I'm Tiago, and I will be teaching you how to do basic MIDI and basic chord progressions today. So last week we discussed the drum rack, which is kind of MIDI, like MIDI in a sense, but today we're going to get more into actual instrumentation and the like more pitch based instruments anyways, like your keys and your pads, that sort of thing. So anyways, let me get this music out of the way. Cool. All right, so to start with, what is MIDI? Well, basically MIDI, unlike audio, is a parameter to make the computer make sound. So it tells the computer where, when, what, and how long to make the sound. It's basically controls all the virtual instruments that the software that you're using uses. You're able to draw with it and also play MIDI. So unlike audio files where you can just drag and drop and it's a set audio, a MIDI isn't technically an audio. It's just, like I said earlier, specific instructions for the computer to make specific sounds. And today I will be getting into that a little bit. So, what we're going to start with here is, last week I started in the session mode. Today we're going to start in this mode instead. And to begin, you're going to go to one of these MIDI channels. See, in Ableton, you can have either MIDI or audio channels. And today, we're going to be using MIDI, obviously, hence the title. But audio is where you'd basically drag and drop like audio files that you have downloaded. But that's not what we're going to talk about today. So, what we're going to do here is right-click on this first gray square under MIDI and click Insert Empty MIDI Clips. And what do we have here? We have basically a little keyboard. This keyboard, if you put your mouse right on the left side and click, you can drag left and right to zoom in and zoom out. You can also drag up and down to go down your scale. So MIDI on Ableton has a range all the way up to your G8, and if you go to the opposite end, you can go down to C-2. So today we're going to mostly be involved in this, the middle range of the keyboard. If you look on the left side here, you'll also see this button loop, which we're going to keep on for now. But if you turn it off, that means it's only going to play your audio one time. So similar to in the other arrangement, but we're going to keep that on for now. And in this loop, you can adjust the length of your grid, which we're also just going to keep at 1 for now. Cool. So, first things first, we are going to choose a sound. So we're going to go into instruments or sounds. Actually, let's just go sounds here. If we go into piano and keys, I think for today, we're just going to stick with the classic grand piano. So you double click that, and now you have your grand piano sound. Similar to last week, there should be a little headphone button up here. If you click it, which I already did, you can basically click and hear exactly what you're playing. So, what we're going to do today is start with one of the two methods that you can use like to create MIDI, and that's just drag and dropping and drawing in notes. So I'm going to double click right here and add this note. I'm going to copy and paste it every beat. So right now we have a length of 1 bar on the side, so every single, like, how should I describe this? Like, the different shades of gray right here represent the different beats. So you start with beat 1, beat 2, beat 3, and beat 4, and that's your complete bar. So right now we have 1 note per beat in each bar. So if I press play, easy enough, right? So we have 4 notes, 4 C's. But it kind of sounds a little bit robotic. They all sound exactly the same. So here's a way to change that. If you select all of them, or Control Command A, whatever you use, or just dragging over all of them, if you look here, there's this feature called Randomize. And that Randomize feature will basically make your notes sound a little more human. So if you look down here at the bottom of your like note grid, you'll see there's a section called velocity. And for each note there's a line, and you can adjust the volume of each individual note. So I can make it quieter, I can make it louder. So let me just mess with these a little bit. So now this one I've set to a lower velocity, this one higher, etc. So now it'll sound a little bit different. So you see how the first and the third beats both sound a little bit quieter, and that's because I've decreased the velocity. Anyways, if you don't want to make it that obvious that you're adjusting the velocity so drastically, what you can do is use the randomize feature that I mentioned earlier and go to this bar right beside it. You can adjust the range to however you'd like, but say we want to keep it within reason, about how close to the original sound, to the original velocity. So let's set it down to like a 20 or so, and click randomize. Now they're a little different, but still in the same general area. Perfect. So I'm going to set these back to how they were before. And now I'm going to get into some basic chords. So to start, what I'm going to do is highlight all of these notes, and I can either drag them out all the way, or you can also use this legato feature right there. But first thing, actually, I'm going to adjust the length of this loop that we've got here. So right now the loop is only 1 bar. So we've got your beat 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. But we're gonna slide this number up to 4 bars. So we have a 4-bar pattern. And we're gonna delete the rest of these notes actually. I lost my notes there. Okay, so now we have a longer grid that has the same pattern here. For the time being, we're gonna change this because this looks like a lot, right? So if you right click on the grid and you look down here to fixed grid, right now it's set to 1/16, which is a lot. Let's make it simpler. Let's go down to 1 bar. And now we've got a simpler grid. So let's extend this note all the way. Cool. And what we're also going to do is add a couple extra notes. But before we do that, here is a simple trick to get good sounding chords if you might not know music theory, because some people don't, and that's okay. Because it kind of, Ableton allows you, and I'm sure other DAWs do as well, but Ableton allows you to basically draw them in without knowing exactly what will sound good, because there's a feature for that. There's a trick. So right here on the side, I have already selected it. So this is what it'll look like without the grid. But if you click on the scale button here, the pink notes here, they're actually your scale. The notes in the scale. And what scale? That's your C minor. For this video tutorial, I'm going to set it to C major. So all of these pink notes here are in the C major scale. This still kind of looks a little complicated, so there's a way to actually showcase these notes individually, and that is by going up here and clicking scale. And now all of these notes here are in your scale. So you can basically add any of these notes and it'll sound good. So we're going to start with a little chord progression by just clicking in some notes just like that. And I'm going to change this grid to a half bar just because that's what I prefer a little bit. But so now if I play this, see, it's already sounding pretty nice. Now, I said chords. Now chords take multiple notes to create, and normally that can be a little confusing because which notes will sound good in which contexts, in which keys, with which melodies. Well, using the scale feature, it's a lot easier to make that happen, and in my opinion, the simplest way when you're in this setting is to just go right above the C here, and you count 2 up and click in another note, and then you click 2 above that and add another note, and you can make those legato. And once again for the G here, we can click 2 above it and 2 above that, and then above the A here, and then above the F. So there's just 1 note gap in between, but these are diatonically correct chords. So this should sound good, and let's test it out. Nice. For this video, I might bring these down an octave, and just by highlighting them all and dragging them down, and cool. But now, like I mentioned earlier, that kind of sounds a little robotic, so we want to add some character to it, and we can do that by highlighting all of it and clicking the randomized velocity range. Boom. And you don't just have to randomize, like you can go in individually and just adjust each of the notes as you please. But realistically, you don't have to. It's a personal preference thing. Now, here's another trick that you can do. These chords sound sonically nice, but we want to add a little more character to them. And we can do that by adding a bass note. And the easiest way to add a bass note to this is by holding down Shift and clicking the bottom note in each chord. And then you hold down your Alt key if you're on Windows or your Option key if you're on Mac. Hold it down and drag. It creates a duplicate, and you can drag it down exactly 1 octave to the low C. So now, if we play it, cool. It does sound a little better now, but we can make it sound even better by doing something with the middle note. This is once again a personal preference thing, but I find it gives it a little more character. So if we shift click all of these notes in the middle, and similarly we hold the Alt or the Option key and drag them up 1 octave. Or instead, actually, we're just going to drag them up 1 octave. I'm going to get rid of that middle note and replace it with the same note that's exactly 1 octave above. So originally we had this note, now we've got this note. So it's the same key, but it's just in a different octave. So now, if we play this, the original simple, boring chord pattern, with our added bass note and our added third above the top note, it should sound, there should be a little more character to it. So let's see how that sounds. Now this is generally the basics of making chords. You can adjust to whichever scale you'd like. So whichever key, C, and you can go major, minor. You can even go into some of these other experimental and more complicated keys if it interests you. But for the sake of this video, we're just going to stick with C major. Now, let's say you're even getting a little bored with this. You're not limited to sticking with these chords. You can play around with it a little bit. Cool. That already, in my opinion, sounds 10 times better than the original. So, that is one way to do MIDI. But there's another way. And to do that and to showcase that, I'm going to switch to a different arrangement and actually switch to an entirely different MIDI channel. I'm going to get rid of this one for now. So, the two ways, like I said prior, can be drawing in your notes or physically recording. So, usually that's done with a MIDI keyboard, but you're not necessarily limited to it because Ableton has a cool feature that allows you to turn your keyboard into a MIDI keyboard of sorts. So if you look up in the top right at this keyboard button and click that on, you have just turned your keyboard into, well, a keyboard, I guess. So starting with A on your keyboard should be C. So A through K there is just your C major scale. I learned this today, actually. I didn't realize this was the thing. Yeah. And an easier way, instead of just clicking up here, you can press M to turn it on and off. So A through your K is your C major scale, and above that, for the black keys, you've got W and E, and then T, Y, and U. So for your chromatic scale, yeah, oh, I just hit the mic. So you can use that if you're wanting to lower the octave or lower the pitch of those notes. That is where your Z and X keys come in. So Z, if you click Z, it'll basically decrease the octave of your keyboard. And in a similar story, your X will increase the octaves. Yeah, cool. So the way to do this, once again, remember you have your instrument, we still have the grand piano in this channel, and you have your recording button on for the channel. So if you click record, it'll give you a 1-bar count in, which I don't have on actually. And I don't know how to turn that on. But it will give you a count in, and once you click record, you can basically start recording. Just like that. And pressing the stop to stop. So you can use your keyboard, but if you have a keyboard, how should I say that? You can use your computer keyboard if you don't have a piano keyboard or a MIDI keyboard instead. But for today, I do have a MIDI keyboard beside me, so that's what I'm going to use. And I got to figure out how to do the proper count in. Oh well. It was working earlier, but it appears I turned it off somehow. Okay. So I'm gonna record something. So just like that. I'll have to adjust this because for some reason I don't know how to do the count in. But we have our chords here. I don't like that one very much. It's a bit better. There we go. So we have our chords there. And what we can do now, because obviously they sound nice, there's a little bit of error in that. If I zoom in, they're not perfectly in line with the start of the beat. And that's basically just human error, but we can change that, we can fix that. So by doing that, or to do that rather, you'll want to highlight or Control A all of your notes on the grid here, and right click. And this is where we're going to get into one of my personal favorite things, and that is quantization. So quantize. So either using Command U or Control U, or by right clicking, you can quantize these, which basically will line it up perfectly to the beat, to the start of the beat at least. So I like these chords. And once again, to add that bass note, which is very important, we're going to shift click all of these bottom notes. Oops. Hold down Option or Alt. And drag them down one octave. Oops. There. Now there's a little something different about this grid that I forgot to mention, but this is how it looks without your scale feature. So if you are familiar with music theory and you're more confident in knowing how to draw in chords, this is how I personally prefer to do it, how I personally draw in my chords. But the scale option is always a helpful starting guide at least. And that's how you'll use it. So now we've got our bass note for these chords. No, we don't. I screwed that up. One sec. I think I dragged those too far. Maybe I'm not very confident in my scales after all. Oops. Cool. So I'm going to highlight all of these because I once again want to drag them down one octave. And similar to before, once again, I'm going to drag the third note up one octave to give it that extra depth. And similar to before, you're not limited to just this format. You can adjust this however you'd like. So maybe I want this second note to be a bit lower, this second C. Maybe I want like a heavy hitting bass right there, or a heavy hitting low note. Cool. Now, what I'd like to do is make these legato because it just sounds nicer sometimes. And it's easier to manage and easier to visualize sometimes. Cool. So that's another chord progression right there. Gonna add another MIDI track in. And say, for example, I add the grand piano to that and keep this running. Oh, I forgot to loop it. Now with this, if you're wanting to try to experiment with like a melody, you can keep this playing in the background and you've got another channel if you'd like to draw it in. And you can just play on your keyboard or on your MIDI. Cool. I might have to record something later. That's kind of that sounds kind of nice. Anyways, yeah. So similar story. Definitely not an excuse for me to keep playing, but if I hit record, awesome. I think I went over that twice actually. Oh, I did. So I should be able to just drag that out from the beginning one. And now we've got a little track here. A simple one, obviously, but oh, once again, we're gonna Control A or Command A. Oh, no, not like that. We're just gonna click on this and Command A. Oh no, excuse me. I'm gonna highlight all these notes actually. That's what I'm gonna do. And then right click and quantize. yeah. So, those are two different ways to use MIDI. If there's anyone in chat that has any questions, I'll stick around for a couple minutes. Or I'll give it a bit anyways. Or if they'd like me to go over something again. Can you just go over how you became so handsome? Aw, you shouldn't have, bro. You're too sweet, too kind. Maybe that's what the next tutorial will be for anyways. I guess that about does it for this time then. I think next week, or no, next week will be Alex doing the Logic version of this tutorial. And then the week after, hopefully there will be a post about the stream beforehand. I know if you aren't in the, like, if the viewers aren't really in the loop, you might not have heard about this until last minute, but I appreciate whoever came out tonight and whoever stopped by, and I hope you learned something anyways. But yeah, hopefully that'll be more available for you guys for next week and for the next couple tutorials. But yeah, anyways, I think that'll do it for this one. Hope you all have a good night, and I'll see you next time. Gotta get that outro music in.